Good Wednesday morning. Welcome to TRS Live. I am your host, Matt Trotz. Joining me today are the Daiwa twins.
We're twinning.
Lance Kozik and Kyle Carpenter. Gosh, I like a lot of things. I didn't get the memo on this morning, fellas.
Oh.
Like a lot of things. Throws that in there.
Even comments he throws in there, like a lot.
They're not
Hidden
even
jabs.
hidden. They're just
Jabs.
We could have a whole conversation while Matt's hidden comments.
Can you?
Yeah.
Morning, Duffy's fishing. Kyle Morey. My screen just broke.
Yeah.
You should probably upgrade
must have
your
been a
screen.
mirror.
Yeah. So we are obviously live on Facebook, YouTube, as well as the Fix TV. Are you guys on the app right
I
now?
got her up.
Yep.
You got the app all fired up there on Fix.
Had her up.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
that-
you guys are on your not so peasant phones, I guess, right? On your iPhones.
I'm gonna cast it to this TV.
Do it, I
because you
dare
can
ya.
do it with the fixed TV app.
Do it.
Do it. Try
it.
it.
Try it.
Andy, how do I do that?
Dare. Here's a
Andy,
dare.
help. Is Andy on here today?
Andy, where's
Andy's
Andy at?
here. Andy's back from his vacation. Andy, how was your Christmas?
It was busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't really get to relax at all. It was just packed full nonstop.
So you're saying coming back to work is more relaxing than being at home?
Honestly, yeah, I was looking forward to coming back to work.
Oh,
Truthfully.
man.
So,
Isn't
how about
that
you guys,
something?
huh?
Isn't that something with the holidays? How everybody looks forward to them and then can't wait for it to be over.
Yeah,
I
pretty
always look
much.
forward to it when it's over. How was your guys' holidays, Andy asked?
There's like no anticipation anymore. For me, it's all turned into preparation for the holidays,
yeah.
which I think makes it go by really quick.
Yeah.
Like it's here and it's gone for me.
Yeah.
Like I'm not like necessarily getting excited as I'm like, all right, I gotta get this done, that done, this done, that time off, and then all of a sudden it's over and back to the grind.
Well, it's a lot like the seasons, right? Like bow season and open water fishing season. We wait all year for it to get here, then it's gone. And you're like, well, that was a lot shorter than what I thought it was going to be.
I think, yeah, that's a true statement.
With that, I don't wait for it to be over.
Right.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, that's true.
That's sad when it's
Yeah.
over. When
Yeah,
the holidays
that's-
are
yeah.
over, it's thank God. Moving on. Winter can be over now.
Yeah, I'm ready for that one too already.
Yeah.
So,
On the this week, I should say, and last week and the last couple of weeks, I've been looking at the old head-to-head, like the
Originals.
the Fox River
OGs.
and all those kind of stuff. Man, it makes me want to get the boat out. Like I'm ready for it right now. I keep on thinking I'm gonna step outside and I'll see some open water and start fishing again, but
yeah, then your dreams are crushed.
they're crushed.
quickly.
Yep.
Yeah, and then the wind hits you in the face.
Yeah, at least it's not as windy today.
Yep.
So hopefully everybody had a great Christmas. Looking forward to New Year's coming up. Any New Year's plans, fellas? Is anybody? Yeah,
with
Bueller?
the nieces and nephews
Probably try to do some dinner or something with the wife and
popping bottles.
popping bottles, maybe
Spray champagne.
shaking some
Andy?
champagne bottles.
I don't know. We usually go bowling, but the bowling alley has a new owner, and they haven't been doing many of the holiday activities this year, so they might not do a New Year's party.
They don't recognize New Year's.
I know one. Lance is very familiar with the bowling alley that does a
Yep,
great New
yep.
Year's bash.
There's a local bowling alley which throws a heck of a New Year's party if you want to make it that way. So
You might be able to see Lance's writing on the wall still there.
yeah.
Smell with
All right, so
champagne.
it's champagne. It's a bottle of champagne that got sprayed. Everybody.
Yeah.
So
All right, so here we go, everybody. So we're starting our Wednesday show of TRS Live, fresh off the holidays. And what I did yesterday on the Real Shot social media page is I said, we need your help, man. We need some topics. And I think, Andy, if you could bring up that post that I did, it's you and I chilling. I did it in 3D on Facebook. Ooh, so cool.
I saw that.
So cool.
That was nice.
But yeah, so we had quite a few comments come in, and I think Chase Skinner there, right? Did I say that name right, Andy?
Yes.
All right, so Chase had threw a topic out there, and it's all about smallmouth fishing. And I'm like, well, that's perfect. We have Kyle Carpenter joining us today, who absolutely loves to catch smallmouth
I
bass.
love catching them things.
So he says, smallmouth tactics, fishing finesse, swim baits, got a glare. Some of you guys have glare on your side. Can you read the rest of it?
I don't see I have a glare part, but
Oh yeah, there you go.
mainline, leaders, jig head size, hooks, size of baits, and how to fish them.
All right, so we'll
And
cover
where to
Chase's
fish 'em.
topic today, and then some of the other ones, like Carol with the sturgeon decoys. I think that'd be a great one to get like Ryan Foster
Yeah.
on for.
I know
So
nothing about sturgeon, so
yeah, we'll reach out to him. We got Carter to get some musky baits in the store, and that was what I thought about last night. Like, it's opening a can of worms, but like, what are some products that potentially the Real Shot should carry that they don't carry yet, right? Like, there's a lot of things that we have here, but what is like something out there? Maybe we can cover that in another show.
the bass geeks will come out with that one.
Oh yeah, but that's
OSP
fun. Like,
and
because at the Real Shot, right, we love the customers' aspects on things. We like to, a lot of the products that we carry are because somebody came in and said, hey, have you seen that yet? I mean, Big Nate Hahn, if anybody shopped here at the store knows Nate Hahn, he's like, always has something new every single week.
And that's what makes the Real Shot unique too, because you could go to a big box and say, hey, when you get this in, you're going to hear crickets for a while, where we might actually get it in if we can find it. So pretty responsive that way, which is cool.
So I think that's kind of one. And then from some of the other comments, I think Wisco Bass should start their own podcast series here. You're getting a lot of reach out
on there. Yeah, we should probably have one here soon, and maybe get a couple of the anglers to come down and talk about the season and what they're excited about. His question on there is, what's our goals for a 3 to 5 year plan? It's all down. We have them all. Is
this year 4?
This is year 5.
It is year 5 already.
Yeah, year 5.
Wow, that's crazy.
It is. It's insane.
Well, yeah. So another Wisco question from Hunter. So yeah, we appreciate that. So we'll keep that post up there for a while. So if anybody's looking to throw some information out there, go ahead and just throw it on that post, and then we'll kind of note them, and we'll get to them possibly starting Friday and then Monday and so on and so forth. So, morning, Bob Kloss. How was your Christmas? He said more walleye hair jigs from On the Fly. Holy man.
We need more.
We need more.
We got a lot.
Gotta have
Got
more.
more. We need more. Mm-hmm. So the other thing too with covering the smallmouth talk today is I actually, Scott Pieper, who works obviously here with Fix, had a good, cool part of what he thinks the show could be, Factor of Fiction. So yesterday, since we were going to talk about smallmouth bass in general, I kind of went through and I wrote down some fact or fiction.
These ought to be interesting.
So we'll go through some of these later on. Yes, there you go. 10 things you probably didn't know. So I used a couple different websites. I think Wired to Fish was one, and then I just actually used Wikipedia. So don't bring those up, Andy, because there I might have some of the answers. I don't want these guys to see the answers to these. So I did
You
do
just
a little.
made Andy panic.
Yeah, I just did do a little
Control
fact
Alt
checking.
Delete.
So
Heart attack.
So again, everybody, we're live on Fix TV, YouTube, and Facebook. So the chat is firing up. So if you have any comments, questions, go ahead and fire them up. So what was the first one? Like jig size. Just talk about Kyle Carpenter. Like, let's start with the spring of the year.
Springtime is. I mean, do you want to talk finesse? Are we going to just stay finesse tactics?
I think that was kind of his world.
Everything I talk about typically relates to the Great Lakes.
Yep.
Relates to Sturgeon Bay,
But on your
other parts of
proficiency,
the
you
bay.
were on a river.
Yeah, I was on a river. And that day actually happened to be pretty clear. So everything worked out the way I was fishing there. But for me, finesse is number one thing. If you take anything from this, is the lightest possible, the lightest weight, the lightest bait, the lightest possible you can get away with. Because in the spring, typically you're fishing that much water, right? You're 0 to 6 feet of water, and clear water. There's not a lot of space there for them fish to hide. So they see you, long before you see them.
See them, right?
They know you're there. And the finesse tactics, the lightest, the slowest fall. Yeah, there's days where you want stuff that falls faster when they're super aggressive, but if you're just searching, the lightest possible baits you can get away with, be it a tube jig, a finesse swim bait type bait, a hair jig, a jerk bait, super light, super small.
I know this is a question kind of like broad here, but do you think like smallmouth bass are so focused finesse that people overlook like heavy style tactics to catch
absolutely. Finesse is the number one game in Door County, but power fishing a lot of times will win them tournaments.
Really?
Yeah, you find active schools of smallmouth in the spring, and you can get them to eat reaction bites or reaction baits like a jerk bait, a spinner bait, an A-rig. That's what you want.
Yep.
Because you found active schools.
Can you power fish that early in the year, the spring of the year?
Yeah. some of the best days I've ever had with an Alabama rig came in May.
Really?
Yep.
Nice.
So power fishing tactics, spinnerbait,
Spinnerbait, jerkbait, inline spinners for some guys. Travis Manson, shout out there.
Okay.
One of his videos, I was picking on him because he had a inline spinner.
Like a French spinner, they call it, or whatever.
It was
Little
like
Meps
a
or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
little Mep spinner, but they work. You know,
They do
yeah.
work. Like I know my dad growing up, like my grandpa and him would always go fishing. And like the number one bait they always used for bass, like they would call them black bass back then, but it was was a French spinner. My dad absolutely loved the French spinner, and I think there's a lot of ways that you can fish a French spinner. You can either, like the ones I always remember, like you said, with the Meps with the buck hair on the back end of them, but you can do single hooks with twister tails and so on and so forth.
His comments pretty funny. We should bring him on. He can talk about him.
Well, we're going to probably get him on closer to whitefish season.
Yeah, definitely.
As a season. Well, it's his comment. Maybe not everybody can see it.
So finesse, to get back to the finesse side of things, is small tubes, 2 3/4 inch tube. I don't throw anything bigger than that unless it's a finesse style tube. Like Get Bit Baits has a finesse tube, a 3.5 inch finesse. It's a long skinny tube. If you watch my episode of Proficient, I talk about that tube in there quite a bit. That tube is I don't consider a hot dog tube. To me, anything over 2 3/4, a multi-dip tube is a hot dog tube, where they're giant. Now there's guys that fish them and they do really well with them. It's all about confidence, but I love a 2 3/4 inch. I call it a choker tube, 1/8 ounce head, no heavier than a 3/16 in the spring, for me.
Yep.
Small swim baits, Kitex 2.8s, 3.3s, in the fats, all the way down to the 3 inch, swing impact. Again, smallest head you can get away with, be it a Dirty Jigs guppy head or any football style head or anything you want to use. Just make sure you're using the lightest weight.
So as you go up the line, then what's your line combination on that? And then you go into your rod reel combinations for that as well.
So line, I like using braid to fluoro leader.
Yep.
It just gives that more sensitivity. It just gives me more control over that fish when I do get a bite, and you don't miss bites. A bite is a no doubt. Like you don't
Feel it all the way through.
You feel all the way to your elbow on if you have good equipment. I don't throw anything heavier than 10-pound mainline on my spinning rods, with all the way down to a 6-pound leader, depending on the water and the depth and the clarity and what structure I'm fishing. Sturgeon Bay, I don't like using anything lighter than 8-pound.
Just because of how abrasive the
Zebra mussels and rocks, and
Yep.
the fish's teeth are sharp. I'm lazy. I don't like retying all the time. So
Well, that was like, because you're talking about like as slow as fall as possible. Do you shorten up your leader length then to help with that braid get that little slower fall, or?
not that slow. Typically you want to go the opposite. You want a longer leader.
It's more invisible.
So because I use high vis line. That's another thing, is I like the high vis. It's basically a bobber on the surface for me, right? You see that line move, you're got a bite. But I like using anywhere from 10 to 20 foot leader. For one, as you break off, you don't have to keep retying a leader, but to get that bright yellow line away from your bait, is a big deal, especially if you're only fishing 3-4 feet of water.
So Chase actually has a comment for you. You throw 2.5 inch tubes, get bit. Is that right bite?
Right bite.
And Howie's tackle.
I've thrown get bit baits forever. Dan's a good friend. Recently, I just purchased a company that a lot of people don't know about yet, but I purchased it from local here in town, is Crooked Creek. So we've had some Crooked Creek in the store, but as I get that growing, it's the same thing. It's a 2.5, 2 3/4 inch, that style of tube, just like Get Bit or Bright Bite or any of them Howie's tubes.
That's perfect. See,
And they're all good.
This is what I like, because Chase is really firing up the chat now. He's got a lot of questions for you. You want to address his next comment then?
I don't throw the big dudes in the spring. I don't really feel like for me, it's not that necessary to be that heavy. I do like the bulkiness sometimes of that, but you can't get the bulkiness without going heavier.
So if anybody's listening and not watching the comments,
Yeah.
what was the question?
It was also, do you try the fatter tube jig inserts like Big Dude, or I will put a football head in there as well? So And that's one thing too. That's the other thing is like sometimes just changing up the head style could actually help you with a different, a bite where they've used to the same style or same fall, something
Right.
like
Head
that.
style, the eye tie angle, 90 degree to a 60 to a 30 to a flat eye to an inline eye. There's all kinds of different options. I'll go back to me being lazy. I threw a 90 degree 1/8 ounce 1/0 must-add heavy wire for tubes all the time, all year round. Go from 1/8 up to 3/8. There are times if I go to a bigger flipping style tube, I'll use a different hook, like a big dude or something, if I'm ripping through grass. But 99% of the time, I'm throwing that 275 with a heavy wire hook, 90 degree eye.
Yeah, don't overthink it.
Yeah, I don't. I really try not to overthink it. There are times where in super rocky, snaggy areas where a 60 degree would definitely come through the rocks better.
Does that football head in a tube help come through the rocks? Does it give it a little bit
It doesn't do much inside of the tube, but it helps with profile. Yep, it gives it that bulkier look. Now, like I said, going back to the lightest possible, a 16th or an 1/8 ounce tube head or football head is this wide.
Yep.
Well, the tube is this wide, so you really don't see much when you're that small, when you get that low in ounces.
I think one thing that maybe a beginner may overlook too is the shank size of your hooks, making sure that you have the proper length of the hook. We just, like you said, not being lazy, but just kind of getting comfortable, right? You don't always match that long shank up to a longer tube or vice versa, a shorter shank to a shorter tube.
Like I said, the 2 3/4 inch tubes or 2.5 to 2 3/4 inch tube, a 1/0 is a perfect size for what I like. I don't like that hook sticking past the tentacles too far. I like it right on that. And then when I do fish that finesse, I use the same jig, the same hook. I just choke it up and pop the hook out, the tube up higher, because it's thin enough.
Yep.
With that single dip tube, that finesse tube, that gap is still there.
Do you ever get crazy? I mean, I know we're spending a little time here talking about tube fishing. Do you ever fish like the stupid tube or anything like that? Isn't that what that one's called?
Yeah, the stupid tube's good around wood, good around flipping structure. It definitely has its niches. I actually got my ass totally kicked from the back of my boat at a divisional tournament by a guy throwing a stupid tube, and that was the first time I ever saw it.
And that wasn't on the Great Lakes?
That was on the Mississippi River.
Really?
Yeah, he absolutely put it to me. I was flipping a beaver, he was flipping that stupid tube, and the thing just killed it. He caught 7 to 1.
I wonder, ridiculous. should I go grab a tube set and we can rig that, or do we just want to do a video with that later on? I was like, oh man, I should have brought some of the stuff.
They can watch it proficient. I talk about it, and so does Gary and his actually.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Do you rig one up too?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. So there you go, Chase. If you're in for information, looking for how to rig up a stupid tube. I think also on TRS Live, I think we did a stupid tube demonstration on that show as well. So I think I tried to make one happen.
We don't have the stupid tube heads.
Okay.
But it's when you get one, if you ever have one, you have to look at it for a while to figure out how to rig it.
Right.
And once you do, you're like, duh.
Yeah.
That was pretty easy.
Have you ever thrown a lance?
No, I haven't. No.
There's so many of these like other rig styles out there, especially like Ned rigging, like the baby child rig or whatever.
I don't have good luck with the stupid tube. My hookup percentage is really low. I actually used it on the bay for a few years when the slime was super bad really early. It won't catch as much crap. Like you won't get that slime, that mungy crap off the bottom on the rocks. But my hookup percentage is so bad.
When that slime is out there, do you still throw a tube, or do you just try to go right to a Kitech and just avoid it altogether, or do you try to work that tube above the rocks? Like you don't want bottom contact, right?
Right. I want the reason I want the lightest tube possible and the longest cast I can make is I don't want that tube digging into the rocks. I want it hovering right off the bottom.
Yep.
Because that's what a goby does, right?
Yep.
That's what the bait fish do. You don't if they're not on crayfish yet. Once they get into crayfish, you want that dug in there, right? They eat crayfish year round if they're there, but you want that tube right off the bottom, just barely touching that slime.
Would you drop shot a tube that early in the year too?
Oh yeah, you could. I don't drop shot tubes at all. There's just so many other good baits for drop shotting, but a lot of guys do. A lot of guys have a lot of success with it.
So the dark sleeper is if they're on goby, right? That's one. What's the Agent E? Is that the other one?
Agent E was the Berkeley
edition
of that.
Is there other ones too?
I think there's a
What's the
Savage.
Savage
Yeah.
makes the
Makes
Gobi tube. They make one similar to
They
that.
actually make a swim bait
Little
like
swim
that
bait
as well.
like that too. The Savage does. Yep.
Yeah, the reason I think of the Agent E is I saw a video. It was pretty cool. Like that Agent E, you could see it drop. There's a smallie, and the camera's like right. I don't know how they get these shots. It's absolutely crazy, but you can see the Agent E drop, and then like the way they work the bait is it actually crawls up the rocks next to that fish, and then just one hop and that fish just sucks it in like it's not even there. Mm-hmm. It was an awesome video.
That was probably tactical bassing.
Oh, could be. I know Wired to Fish does
Them
a lot
guys
of
get some
awesome underwater footage.
Daryl Kubley asked a question about what not braid the leader.
Good question, Daryl.
There's hundreds of them, and they all work. Every one of them works. This last year, I finally switched to the FG. Like I was afraid of the FG just taking so long, and Josh always busted me up for not. I don't know why you're not tying the FG, because he would use the same leader for 2-3 days and just shorten it up as he retied or broke off, and have better success where I was breaking my leader at the knot. And last winter, I just taught myself how to tie it, and I'll never go back to anything else. It's quick to tie on the water. Again, if on that Proficient show, I sit down and tie a couple leaders, and it takes a minute and a half to tie one.
What does FG stand for?
Why don't you tell us?
I think you know, Matt.
Matt knows.
You coined it.
Prior to that, I used Alberto, which is a modified Albright.
Yep.
That one, again, is super fast to tie. It's really strong. It's a good knot strength. The only issue I had with that is when I would get snagged, the braid would cut the fluorocarbon and it would break at the leader. That does get beat up a little more through the guides, where 50, 70, 80 cast, you'll cast and it's gone. It just knot
breaks
finally
and
breaks going through the guides.
Yep.
FG, I have never had that happen. I've had it come untied because I tied a terrible knot, but the knot itself didn't fail. Like Klaus says, he hates tying that on the water. It is a pain, but once you honestly get your fingers to move the way you want them to in that muscle memory, I really don't even need to look at it anymore to tie it.
Right.
You just get so used to doing it.
How long did it take you to perfect that?
I bought that. There was a tool I bought. Don't buy it. You don't need it. It's like a little C-clamp with 3 mounting points. You don't need it. I watched a video online. It was a saltwater fisherman. Man, I always said I wasn't going to forget the name of that video, but it was really good video.
Yep.
I watched it 3 times, tied it, done.
Yep.
I watched that video and, just go to YouTube and just find one.
Sounds like we need to have Kyle Carpenter
and
do
tie
a
it.
video for the Real Shot YouTube page.
Yeah, and Josh is really quick at tying it too. Like in the boat, what I do in a bass boat is I actually sit on where the passenger console would be, and I sit on the rod and I run the rod through my leg, so my leg holds it down, and then I can keep that tension.
Oh yeah.
That's the biggest thing that makes it a pain in the butt on the water is keeping that constant tension.
Really?
Yeah, and then light line, you're using 10-pound fluoro, it's just flopping around, or 10-pound or 6-pound fluoro, 8-pound fluoro, and 10-pound braid, it's flopping around. Like I said, once you get your hands to that muscle memory, it's not bad.
So I want to
Wax on, wax off.
Chip Goy calls me to White Rhino. He's on vacation somewhere. Why aren't you sitting in a hot tub getting drunk, Chip?
Well, Daryl's in Florida. Daryl says, "What's up from Florida?"
Kubley?
Yeah.
He's working though. He's trucking.
Is he?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if I know how to play fact or fiction the right way. I think you just simply ask, right? But a lot of
Doesn't
these
sound hard.
a lot of these are
Sounds like you
all
got it.
facts. But you guys tell me if it sounds like a fact.
Well, now
or
you just gave it away.
fiction. Okay. Oh shit. Yeah, I'm not. I told you I'm not good at it. All right, here we go. So fact or fiction? Do
Fact.
smallmouth bass do their lines fade with age? Like their color patterns and stuff, do they fade with age?
Oh, I would say
Say
fact.
yes.
Yeah, that is true. So then, since we're on that, here's kind of more true, false, fact or fiction. So how long does an average smallmouth live? I know that's a loaded question.
Depends where it is,
Yeah,
but
what part of the country?
15 to 18 years, I'd say.
Yep. Yeah, I think the oldest one recorded was like 20 years old or over 20 years old.
Yeah,
pretty
there
crazy.
was.
How did they age a smallmouth?
Scales,
By the
isn't it?
scales.
By the scales?
I think it's by the scales.
I remember one fish, probably the oldest fish that I've ever seen come out of the bait, just by looks of the fish.
Yep.
Caleb Caldwell caught during the fall sturgeon bait tournament. I think it was like 7.65 or something. The thing was absolutely giant. Like then you weren't seeing them big fish in the fall. Man, that thing just looked like it was 100 years old.
Really?
That fish had to be pushing 20 years old.
Wow.
Well, and you think about that. I mean, it's like, yeah, how many catch and releases has that fish seen to be, which is awesome. I mean, that shows you that it works. Catch and release works, right?
Yep.
So kind of going off of that one, I think this one's more at a at largemouth bass. Where did I had it? It was okay. So this is just, I'm just straight say this is a fact here. So bass.
Are we playing a game here?
God, shut up.
It's a fun game.
So they have to
Pat, you
consume
win.
10 pounds of forage to gain 1 pound. So that's a largie. So think about that. That's crazy.
What do you think about a fish? They're always working out.
Always moving,
They're
yeah.
always moving.
Yeah.
They're never not moving. And you could say during winters, but they still move.
And how sensitive they are to water temperatures. I think that would kick their metabolisms up and down.
Fact or fiction? Kyle Carpenter and Travis Goss snuggle while on the road.
Can't confirm or deny.
Can confirm.
What happens in the truck stays in the truck, right,
Yeah.
Travis?
Couple beards.
Yeah.
Kyle, you would really like to know too.
Couple beards get twisted together.
Yeah, that's fact or fiction. Fact or fiction. So Chip says he's on the beach right now in Mexico. That sounds like a rough spot.
Try to
be.
keep your wife sober this trip.
Why? What kind of fun is that?
So as we progress, now we're early spring, right? We progress more into the spawn. Then you just go more sight fishing at that point then?
Well, we'll go back. We talked mainly about the tube jig.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
There's the other tactic that everybody is on. Well, there's two of them. One of them I really don't do much anymore. One's a hair jig. Great tool, great just fleecing tool is what I used to call it. When you found a school of fish, you caught every fish in the school with that hair jig. 8-10 years ago. It's not like that anymore. You can still catch some fish on it, but it's not like it was. But the swim bait basically took over for that. Small Kitech, small mega bass, style swim baits, 2.8s, 3.3s, all the way up to a 4-inch. But that style has basically taken over the finesse game in Door County. It's every guide's got all their clients throwing them. Everybody, you go around anywhere in the spring and you see guys with chucking little swim baits.
And to your point before, Matt, that's another one too. You really have to pay attention to the hook shank size. Like I don't know how many people have come in the last couple of years looking for swim baits, whether it's walleye or bass. They'll grab like a Northland Fireball and like a 3/8, and I'm like, no, don't do that. Like you're never gonna get a hook in that fish.
Well, you don't want your hook too big either,
right?
Because if your hook's, there's a point where that swim bait's designed to paddle from, right?
Yep.
And wherever that point is the length of the hook you want to be as close to that as you can. Best way to check that is take a swim bait, pick it up, and let it flop over.
Oh, yeah.
Wherever that fall is, or you slightly move it, wherever that point is, that's where you want your hook shank as close to that as you can
Yeah,
get
because
it.
I guess you want the tail moving as much as possible, but you want that
That's the
hook
business
as,
end of that
as
is-
far back as possible. So
Yep.
you got to find that.
But if you get back
Happy
too
medium.
far, now you're taking a
Right.
wobble that
Yep.
might have been 3/4 to an inch wide
Yep.
and knocked it to a 1/4 inch.
Yep,
So
for sure.
What, obviously, I think I know the answer to this, but what's your go-to swim bait?
swim bait,
Yeah.
Kitech.
Yep.
In the spring, it's a 2.8 fat color electric shad. If you only wanted to buy one color and only have one color in your boat, is the electric shad. Just
Do we have any Kitechs? Did the Real Shot get some in?
Yeah, I think I know a place we can get some.
Yeah.
700 square feet of them right now.
Well, but so obviously we have a ton of Kitechs, but man, what is it? The Strike King? Is it the Rage Swimmer?
Yeah,
Swimmer,
Strike King, Rage Swimmer, Guggen, Saucy Swimmer.
What's the
Swimmer.
the new Berkeley one?
Um,
I just did a post on it the other day. What was that one? I can't remember.
I know
But
what
there's so many different.
I'll be honest, I throw Kitechs. That's what I carry in my boat. I have some, real new unique ones that I color up myself of other brands, but
Is it more or less just confidence in it, or are you just? I mean,
confidence.
if you would try something else, I mean, you're not opposed to trying
No,
it.
I'm
but
not
you just
opposed to
know
it.
what's working.
I just haven't found anything that's as readily available in that color, electric shad or goby or whatever it is.
How often is it that color makes or breaks the day?
Quite a bit, to be honest. I mean, if I'm talking generalized, right? If you just want to go out and throw one, electric shad's the color I would start with.
Make a huge difference. When I was fishing with you and Josh
there's
up north this year, I think I was throwing like a smallmouth. No, I was throwing the sunfish or something.
Sungill.
And you guys were throwing electric shad, and it was like 6-1. And then I put that one on, and then
Some of that could have been angle too.
maybe,
There's so many factors that go into it, and I try to think about that before I switch colors to what my partner's throwing, or if the guy I'm fishing with is catching them, and I'm not. I start looking at other things besides the color.
Right.
Am I reeling it too fast, or what size head am I using? What is he doing different before I just directly go to, oh, he's throwing sungill, so I'm going to put one on.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, it's
So it's the power swimmer, and like Chase also asked, anyone use the 6 Sense Divine? Have you used that one yet at all?
I have not.
Is that another one? I think that's another one we carry, isn't it?
I know we carry the Divine heads. I don't know if I've seen the Divines out there, but we probably do. I think.
Yeah, it's
Nick
another.
Sense has a great selection of stuff.
Yeah.
Man, they really exploded
Yep.
with some and quality stuff too.
So then, are you still throwing that on the same rod, reel combination, line combination?
So for a tube, I will. I will use my tube rod for a swim bait and vice versa.
Are you all spinning for all this stuff
Yeah.
then?
Yep, all spinning. The only time I'll ever throw a tube on a bait caster is when I'm using like 1/2 or 3/4 ounce, something where that weight's fighting against you, and you really gotta smack it home. You know, you want a big rod and some heavy line. That's the only time I'll do that. As far as a rod, again, if I go through this on my Proficient episode too, is I love a 7'3" medium extra fast. The rod I use is a 872.
872.
872 NRX 872.
Yep.
It's 7'3" medium extra fast. Some guys don't like that. Some guys think it's too heavy of a rod. I got a buddy of mine that thinks it's a shark rod. Like, man, you could land a great white with this thing. For me, it's perfect.
Right.
It's sensitive. I have 5 of them. When I'm throwing a tube, that's all I'm using. All my reels are the same. Everything's the same. So when I pick up one or the other, I know what to expect from the rod.
So to kind of deviate a little bit, like how do you pick a rod then for the
And years.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like your buddy doesn't like that rod, you like that rod, but you know what? If somebody's coming into the reel shot, right, and you're like, okay, I'm looking for a good quality tube rod or a swim bait rod. There's certain characteristics, but what other factors do you consider when you're picking that rod out?
If like just generalized great action rod for fishing a tube or fishing swim baits or anything finesse is 7 foot medium to medium light. We'll get the job done for everything. Medium, you gain some more backbone. You gain most times a little more sensitivity, where with a medium light, you got, the guys that really come unglued and set the hook hard will make up for that.
So like I'll add in too, not being as experienced. When I went to a medium or a heavier rod fishing a tube, there's so many times you're fishing on rocks, right? You'll get one stuck on a rock. You'll be back here. You'll be 3/4 of the way done with your lift, and you'll get a bite. If you don't have enough backbone to set that hook in that short amount of time, you're not going to pin that fish.
Right.
So that's why I noticed, like, I like a heavier rod. I like that medium rod. If I went to a medium light, I don't think I would get as many hookup.
Well, does the longer rod helps with that as well,
yeah,
right?
same
Yeah,
thing,
like,
yep.
if you had a shorter rod in that circumstance, you're maybe not going to drive that hook home as far.
Yep.
When I first started fishing, the first rod I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm spending this much money on a fishing rod, was a 6'8" medium extra fast Legend St. Croix tournament rod. I loved that rod for fishing tubes until I tried a 7-footer.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh man, how did I ever use a 6'8"? You wouldn't think that length would make that much of a difference. And now I'm to the 7.3 is like, this is my jam. This is where I'm at. This is what I like. But for some, a 7.3 isn't going to be the right rod.
Right.
It's everybody's different. Start with a 7-foot medium, even the medium heavy extra fast. I don't really care for a medium light rod for dragging a tube too often, just because I don't have the sense. I feel like I lose that sensitivity. Now for a swim bait or a moving bait where I'm just winding, that's what I want. 7, and I like a 7.6 medium light.
Yep.
That is, there's Daiwa has one that's awesome. It's a 7.6. It's a Steez. Again, you get what you pay for in rods. It's 100%. I'm not a rod snob by no means, but I just through the years,
It's like you graduated.
graduated myself up and sold stuff to buy stuff and get one to have one type stuff.
Right.
And now I'm at the point where the high-end rods are high-end for a reason. You know, they're worth their weight in gold for me. And somebody that works construction and their hands are calloused and,
Oh, yeah.
you know, your hands are sore or whatever, having that sensitivity is a big deal.
Well, especially spring of the year where you may have an extra
Might have
glove
gloves
on
on,
or
yeah.
something like that. Yeah, that makes a big time difference.
And for me, that rod, that NRX that I use, I can have a glove on. And again, I'll go back to that Proficient show. I'm standing, Scott was my cameraman, and I'm standing this way, fishing like this, talking to Scott with my head turned, and I just set the hook.
Yep.
Like, I wasn't paying attention to that at all.
Just felt it.
And I'm standing there, and I'm like, why is my elbow shaking?
Yep.
You know, like that's how extreme it is when you have the right equipment and balanced and everything to you.
Yep. So kind of like Chase is asking here, the length of the leaders, and we had Daryl help us out. But so you mentioned a long leader for tube fishing that early on in the year. Is the length of the leader still the same for the swim bait?
Yeah.
Okay.
Same thing. Even though that bait's constantly moving, you still don't want, you want it as natural as it possibly can be, you know, at that contact where it runs into the fish. And you don't want, if you think about where you're reeling from here and your bait's down here, a lot of times your leader line is the only thing in the water.
Yep.
You know, your main line sometimes doesn't even go into the water with a longer leader, depending on how shallow you're fishing. But yeah, I like 10 to 20 feet. Start with 20 feet and then shorten up from there.
Well, and kind of like what Daryl here said, with the longer rod, better cast and fish control. The other thing too is with these lighter baits, right? That allows you to throw that thing, especially
Yeah.
a hair jig.
The one thing that you got to be conscious of with a longer leader is you got to tie a good knot, because that knot's going into your reel.
Yep.
You know, there's some guys that will swear, like Josh never sets his leader to go into his reel.
Nope.
He sets his leader right by his finger, and then, you know, where he cuts off the tie is where he wants that bait for his cast, and that's his confidence.
It's
Where-
crazy how that little bit of detail makes a big difference. Because like with the tie, I think the Alberto, I'm not up to FG standards yet, but like with the Daiwa reels, the way their line guide is, if that's what you want to call it, what the heck's that? The actual technical name on that thing? I find my
the bait
leader.
caster, like the T-wing?
Yeah, the T-wing.
Yep.
It pinches in my T-wing all the time.
Oh yeah, for braid with braid to, I'm talking braid fluorocarbon spinning.
Yeah, I know. I'm off the subject a little bit.
But yeah, for casting, you definitely don't want that going into your reel.
Yep.
You want to keep that out of your reel. A lot of guys don't even put it in their guides. Like they'll use a longer lead off the tip of the rod for their cast to have 3 feet, 4 feet if that sometimes it makes it hard to cast, but they don't want that coming into their guides at all.
So then for this type of, well, since we're talking spinning reels, are you big spinning reels, meaning like 3,000, 4,000?
I like 3,000s just because I like to get that bait out there. I like to make the longest cast I possibly can on every cast.
Yep.
Unless I'm sight fishing, obviously. But I whip that bait as hard as I can. And Daryl made a comment, longer rod, longer cast, and better fish control. That's true as long as you have enough line on your spool.
Oh, yeah.
If you're looking for length out of your cast, especially with light line, you need that spool to be full. You want that spool an eighth, if not a little more, less than full, because you don't want that line slapping anything off the reel.
Well, and
That
that's
3,000 gives you more of that. See, a 2,500 and a 3,000, some of the brands, the spool's just deeper.
yeah.
I don't want it deeper. I want it wider.
Huh.
I want it wider so that there's more surface area for that line to spool off.
Yep.
Rather than deeper. Yeah, it's great. You can put 1,000 yards of line on it, but when you get down to 300 yards of line, every cast is shorter because your line's slapping the spool on the way out.
So for those who don't like have the capabilities to have a line winding machine like we have here, how do you spool your line if you're not here? Like, like let's say Bob Kloss or as a guide or something like that, or Chase even. How do you get your line on so tight like that, like a machine would that the Reel Shot has?
So I got it for Christmas. I don't even know how long ago. It's a Berkeley. It's like a triangle line spooler. I've had that thing. I bet you I've had it 15 years.
Do we carry those?
Yeah, we have them.
We had one, yeah.
We
There's a
had
couple
one for a
different
while.
options out there. There's got one that like clips onto a door or something
Yep.
too, right? Like, yeah.
There's so many options. I mean, a lot of guys will just take the spool. The biggest thing if you're putting any line on a reel is make sure it's going on the correct way. If your bail on your spinning reel spins this way, that's the way you want your line to come off your spool.
Yep.
If you twist it, if you go upside down, you're going to get line twists. They're fighting against each other.
Well, and the nice thing is too, like with the braid, if you make that mistake, you just peel it off and then you wind it on the correct way.
So there's the other thing I do every time I spool with braid. When I do it myself, casting, spinning, doesn't matter. Actually, all line is I'll spool it up at home. I'll hook it to the bumper of my truck and I'll walk the whole spool out and stretch the shit out of that line.
Oh, yeah.
Load your rod up and stretch it. Load your rod up and reel it in so it's tight.
Yep.
Banjo string tight. And you'll have way less issues with it. Fluorocarbon especially.
Yeah.
You know, like heavier fluorocarbon I'll leave on for 3-4 months if I'm not using it a lot. You know, if the spool's full, I'll keep it on. But when I'm rigging up before I go, I'll stretch that on my bumper again, and the line loses all of its memory, and everything's great. It will last a year if you take care of it.
So here's Kyle's saying, do you ever microwave the spool in water?
I've actually heard of guys putting it in warm water.
Yeah.
It'll help with memory. It eliminates that memory.
Well, you can't really put your spool in the microwave.
Where you just microwave water and put
No,
spool
I'm
in.
just kidding.
But Kyle likes plastic in the microwave, so
Or metal.
If you pull a little line out and close the door and put the microwave on, as long as it's spinning the right way in your microwave, it'll work.
yeah, putting line on I would highly recommend if you don't do it a lot, just come here and have them do it,
that's
because
especially if you got a bunch of them. It's like
the line
it'll be
spooling
done in a
stations
minute.
are eventually I'm going to have one of them things at home where it's just so much more efficient to do it, and you can just tighten everything up.
Oh, that's what Kyle meant. Oh,
okay. Fact or fiction?
factor fiction. Yeah,
Kyle's working hard today.
there's a
see.
metal spool work in the microwave.
But yeah, line, that we've kind of talked about a bunch of different things here, but line maintenance is a big deal, especially on spinning rods.
Yep.
Well, and like Bob just said too, I mean, that's a big deal.
guide.
Changing it out constantly.
Yep. For a guide, I mean, I would never want to give a client a spinning rod full of fluorocarbon. That would just be a disaster. I would do monofilament if anything. But braid to a leader is just so much more efficient for somebody that doesn't fish all the time. They're going to feel that. Bob made a comment earlier that how many of his clients comment on the better rods that he gives them to use, rather than these, Fleet Farm specials or, some of the lower end stuff.
Yep.
Once you put a good rod in your hand, and it's not just because it's expensive.
Yeah.
If a rod's $550, that doesn't mean it's a good rod for you.
Right.
It could be, I could like it, but it doesn't mean you're going to. Maybe just for example, like a Mags or a JT's or whatever is going to be more up your alley. It's gonna work for you.
Well, obviously spend what you can afford,
Yeah,
but if you can stretch it out a little bit, go a little bit higher. And because, like with being an archer, we get a lot of questions. Well, why do I need this higher end rod? Well, you think about it, that does the majority of the work, right? Like the reel it holds the line and it helps fight the fish, but the rod is doing the work, whether it's putting the action in a bait or it's putting the fighting the fish. That is the thing that drives it. And, a lot of guys when I set up bows are like, well, why do I need this high end rest? Besides the bow, the arrow rest is what drives the arrow.
That's right.
So spend a little more money on your rest, and you can chimp out on a sight or something like that. But it's like that's what drives it.
You can always upgrade these things. Like you get a nice rod, mediocre reel, because what it sounds like, and we went through everything, right? Line, reel, knots, baits, all that kind of stuff. It all needs to work together. So you don't put tiger paws on a Ferrari, like tires, right? Like you got to put the right equipment on the right things to get that performance you want out of it. Yep. So gradually get there and kind of, like you guys said, do what you can as you can do it, and then you'll enjoy it a whole lot more.
Well, fishing with Bob
catching fish is fun.
Yeah.
I was amazed
Catching
at
fish
how
is a lot of
much
fun.
longer the rod is like in having a lot more success and having a lot more feel with that. Like I can't remember, Bob can help me out, but that day we were jigging for walleyes on the Fox in the fall. Like I think I had a 7.9 or something spinning rod, and I was like, it was crazy how much better that rod felt for that application.
For me, outside of target fishing, like skipping a jig under a dock or, casting a spinnerbait into trees or stuff like that, I want the longest rod that I can comfortably do that motion with.
Yep.
Like skipping docks, I use a 7.2. A 7.6, I'm hitting the tip of that rod on the water constantly.
Yep.
You know, hitting things with it. It's just too much. It's just too long for me. But a 7.2 is perfect.
Right.
You know, some guys, it goes from a 7.2 hitting the water all the time down to a 6.8, you know, or a 7 foot. It's
right.
The one thing with rods, and for every person is different. From what you like to I like, what you like, it's completely different.
And what boat you're fishing out of, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like if you're sitting 3 feet off the water or 6 inches off the water, the rod's going to make a difference, right?
That's a good point. You just said what boat you're fishing out of. I fished out of a walleye boat for in a bass tournament this fall, and it was a huge difference from my Camus, from my bass boat. Like it took me a half a day of practice of standing in the back deck spot lock down in the hole in the trolling office of a walleye boat to get that. Everything was just so different. Like the angle I was dragging a tube, something I do a lot.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, and then I get a hook set and my rod's, you know, a foot away from the motor where I'm used to it being 5-6 feet away from anything.
Yep.
You know, just totally different. Fighting a fish at the boat was totally different than in a bass boat.
It's crazy how like we're only still technically on spring talk for smallies, kind of like what Chase wanted us to do. But I mean, there's so many different techniques because now, as you mentioned too, jerk baiting works really well in the spring of the year.
Yep.
Now you're going to a shorter rod.
Yep.
You know, 6'10", what a medium kind of is the perfect rod for jerk baiting, depending on, you know, the size of the jerk bait and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, and the biggest thing with the jerk bait is you want something that's comfortable where you can constantly be jerking it and not hitting the water.
Yep.
Because with a lot of jerk baits nowadays, you know, the Megabass 110, this is the motion. It's no more of this big, long,
big old
mega side-to-side motion. It's a pop at a rod tip, almost like working a topwater. And that bait just goes insane.
Yep.
Where years ago, all the guys that used to throw jerk baits back in the day when a jerk bait was the hottest bait on the bay was a Smithwick Rogue, and you literally put your rod tip on the wall and you jerked over to Lance. That was your motion the whole day.
just to get that thing.
The whole day to get that bait to dive, to
Yep.
dart. Now the equipment is so much different, you know, and Daryl made the comment right there. That's why we carry 30 rods. That's exactly why. Like, I want to have 4 different color tubes. I want to have 3 different color swim baits. I don't want to have to retie.
Right.
So we have multiple of each action.
Well, it's being proficient on the water.
That's
you
right.
know, that's what you got to do, and that's why you learn all this stuff as well. It's
Well, the time on the water is so important that you don't want to waste it sitting down retying all the time.
right.
You know, it just takes a lot of the fun out of it if you're breaking off a bunch and you're spending half your day that you do have to go out and fish retying. Let's say you go at Robert Claus, then he just does it for you.
Yeah, I know, right? That's it's a really nice situation.
Right, Bob?
Or if you're casting and for walleyes and you hook up big carp, that's fun too.
Santa Claus's cousin says right there, my favorite hair jig rod is an 8.6,
Yeah.
8'6".
That I think that was the rod we used that day.
8'6". That's a big rod.
That is.
That's
It
a
was
long rod.
Yes.
Muskie says.
Yep.
But it was you could be just as accurate with that rod as something shorter. And then because, you know, like you were saying, Lance, though, like if you're snap jigging some of those hair jigs, you know, we were using big 1 ounce hair jigs that day. A lot of times you're up here and that's when it doesn't even hit the bottom and that thing just crushes it.
Yep.
You got to be able to tiptoe on it in order to, you know,
Gotta
drive
have
that hook.
some leverage.
Yep.
It's a lot of good information. I like this. So I mean, I can't believe we're almost at an hour already just on one little topic here. But like, okay, so now we progress, right?
Normal.
Now can we go into the spawn more, or do you want
Yeah.
to?
Yeah, sure.
So okay, now your spawn, you're seeing the fish are progressively getting towards the spawn, right? The males are on the beds. What are you doing then? Are you going more drop shot? Do the rod selection change a lot for that?
I use the same rods. I got 3 baits that I throw on beds, and if they're not going to eat one of them 3, I'm moving on and go find one that will bite it. One's a drop shot. With that drop shot, there's multiple ways to rig it. Anybody that doesn't know this, you got your drop shot weight on the bottom, put your lead about 3 inches above.
Just for bed fishing.
Bed fishing. That's the deadliest way to catch a fish on a bed is a short lead drop shot. It's ridiculous.
Because that mimics the gobies that are just, especially in the
level.
Great Lakes, right?
And you're putting it right in their face all the time. With a longer lead, that bait's up and then it's falling down. Yeah, the fish see it and come up and down to it. But if they only have to move this far to move something off out of their territory, they're gonna do that.
Right.
And then you can just irritate them, quivering it.
What's your go-to then for that style, like bait wise?
3-inch Senko.
Okay.
Yep, I like a 3-inch Senko or something that size.
Hooked wacky style then?
Wacky. Yep. There's really not a bad bait. The biggest thing for bed fishing is you have to be able to see it.
Yep.
The angler physically needs to be able to see that bait to see the fish react to it. You know, if you're just blind casting and dragging through areas where you know there's bed because the water got dirty or something, then I would go to a little longer leader and just kind of drag around. But when you're physically sight fishing that fish, you know, that shorter lead that you can see, it's tough.
What determines how long you're gonna work one bed? Is it how that fish is reacting,
Reaction.
or are you just like 10 minutes? My experience.
There's been fish that I pulled up on where I pull up, first cast, they eat it, and I miss.
Yep.
Then you cannot get them to bite again. Then it comes personal. Now it's like, okay, I got you. Like we're gonna stay here till I catch you.
Right.
We're gonna
If you're
dance.
just all fun fishing, right?
Yep.
But yeah, you let that fish tell you if it's gonna eat. Every smallmouth on a bed is catchable, 100%. You will get that fish to react at some point. You just have to be paying attention when it happens.
And then finding that zone, right? There's a zone in a bed where that fish, you'll just, once you hit that zone, you just piss it off every
there's-
single time.
There's days and times like if you get to a flat right away in the morning, right at daybreak, and it's full of smallmouth, pick up a chug bug, pick up a topwater, and because them fish are as aggressive as they're going to be all day, right then and there. Pick up a topwater bait, and you'll be surprised on how many you get to come 20,
Off the
30
bed?
feet off the bed to eat it.
Really?
Yeah. It's a ton of fun.
Because are they?
I wouldn't do it in a tournament. I wouldn't recommend it at all in
No.
a tournament, but
But are they?
fun
Are they?
fishing,
Are they more trying to feed at that point, or are they still protecting the
protecting.
bed?
They're still protecting.
Really?
Yeah, and it's a blast. Absolute blast. I
never-
don't do it too often, but
It's just if the conditions are right.
yep, if it's right, calm, somewhat of a darker sky, go out and chuck that chug bug. It's a freaking blast.
The banjo minnow, says Dr. Robert Claus says the banjo minnow. That's a good one. Door County.
The banjo minnow on a drop shot, I would assume,
Well, that
or
yeah.
just on its own.
What's the Great Lakes finesse now that we carry that's gotten
Snack craw.
Yeah.
Yep. So
There's a drop minnow too, right?
the drop minnow, yeah, they have a bunch of different ones, and they all work. They all work well. That snack craw on beds is really good, really good. That pretty much replaced the Ned rig for me.
Was that so? You said there was 3 that you're using for bed fishing.
Drop shot, tube, and then a super finesse, either a small finesse jig, excuse me, with a snack craw or a Ned type bait.
What about going to opposites, like going to a big, just obnoxious style bait?
Siri wants to talk to everybody, I guess.
She's gotta chime in there a little bit.
What was that, Matt?
Well, like going to something.
That Aussie girls taking
Siri,
over the
Siri
world.
wants to get on this. Something big, aggressive, like a mag draft, or I've heard those being used too.
Yeah, for smallmouth, like I said, they are very aggressive when they're on the bed. They'll eat about anything when they're active. When they're aggressive and guarding, they'll eat anything. You could throw a 8-inch mag draft at them and they'll eat it. They're kamikaze.
Right, but that you're just mostly the finesse game when they're
Yeah,
on the bed like that.
I like that challenge, one-on-one, watching them, looking at them, and it's a blast. It's an absolute blast. I'm glad it's a small part of the year.
Yeah.
Because that would overtake my whole season if I could do that year round.
Well, like you said, finesse, you're a lot more directed with your cast. It's not covering water. You want to throw it right there. It's 3 feet wide right there.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
There's a funny story about bed fishing is on my desk I have a bait, the weight, the hook, everything hanging there. I was up in Door County and so was Brian Keller, and we were in the same area, and we found some fish on beds and reeds, and I threw it in. When they're in reeds, they're really tough.
Right.
Because you got to get them fish out of them reeds. And we were up there just fun fishing and just had a blast, and he was with his son, and they caught him just as good as we did, just had a blast. And I broke a fish off. Talking about how aggressive they are. I broke a fish off and retied, whatever, moved on, kept fishing. Brian comes to work that Monday with that whole set.
I remember
With the
that.
hook,
Yep.
the bait, the everything. And I know it's mine because I actually, there was that day they wanted it red.
Okay.
They wanted red. Why? No idea. But every bait that I had, it's a chartreuse stream shot that I dyed red. It was insane. So he comes back with it. Brad Getz just said he passed the cemetery and didn't crash. That's a really good thing for old headstones there. That's an inside joke. So there's not many cemeteries Brad drives by that he doesn't run into. So need to get saved at 3 o'clock in the morning.
That could be another show all on its own. I have no
Brad
idea what
could
you're
have his
talking
own
about.
show for sure.
So they're dirty water, blind beds, half-ounce spinnerbait.
Yeah. Again, when the water's dirty, bed fishing is more of a searching game, and electronics have changed that.
Yep.
You know, forward-facing sonar, live scope has changed the bed fishing game completely.
This might be an episode where we have to be like to be continued on this one. If we hit that hour mark and we're
at an hour.
We're almost there. 5 minutes roughly.
Time flies when you're having fun. I could talk about this stuff all day.
Well, it's
the
very
interaction's
informative.
been awesome too. You know, getting
That
guys
helps
back
a
and
ton.
forth
Yep.
is a ton.
Yeah, it's well, like you said. I mean, there's just so much information on, and we're just barely to the spawn.
The funny part is my outlook on it's way different than everybody else's.
Yeah.
Like somebody else could sit down here and say everything Kyle does is stupid,
Right.
but that's what works for me.
So when you go to the bed fishing game, that's when the flogger comes into play too, right?
Yeah, if you're fishing deeper beds.
Do you shorten your rod length for that then?
I used to. I actually, when the first time I had a flogger, I was actually using an ice fishing rod because it's
You're like this.
you're in the water and on a bass boat you're hunched over, and I don't do good hunched over already.
Yep.
I have to lay down. And that shorter rod is better, but the problem is once you get to here and you set the hook, you have to be able to get to that quick.
Yep.
Otherwise you're going to lose every fish that you hook with that short little rod. So I got myself, used to using that a normal rod.
So I got another one. I know I'm not asking these right, but how fast do you think a smallmouth can swim?
How fast?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Got to be 30 miles an hour, I bet.
So there's actually a formula. So it's they can swim
Length times
at
width
speeds
times girth
2.5
divided by 5.
times their body length.
Really?
2.5 times.
So a
Yeah.
20-inch fish can go 50 miles an hour.
So that's
Well, it'd be faster than that.
Yep.
wouldn't it?
So they can swim.
Pretty close to that.
How fast can a smallmouth swim? They can swim at speeds 2.5 times their body length.
Wow.
That's just smallmouth. That doesn't
from
correlate to the
smallmouth.
other
Yep. If you look
species.
that up, yep.
Interesting.
So
Yeah,
I thought that was pretty interesting right there. That's crazy. Like they're like torpedoes in the
Oh,
water.
I've watched them swim away from me that fast. You get to see how fast smallmouth are when you're shallow searching for schools and you're like, God dang it.
Yeah.
You just see them scattering away from you. Like,
Yep.
Well, and if anybody, Chase, especially, like if you haven't been up to the bay and you can get the opportunity, like if Bob or somebody's booking trips like that, go experience
Yeah, definitely.
that spawn style when you're cruising the flats.
oh no, don't talk spawn with guides.
I suppose. Okay.
Guides don't bed fish.
But either way, but it's like,
They don't fish shallow in spring, or they don't fish Door County at all in spring.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
God.
You did it, Matt. You got.
I'm not saying Bob in general, but
But
got Kyle wound
like
up.
what I'm trying to say
Not a
is like
touchy
it's just
subject at all.
crazy to see these big fish just
Oh, it is.
cruising, and it's so frustrating when they don't
Even-
want to bite.
even if you don't even catch them,
Yes.
to pull up to a like you can go into Little Sturgeon in the month of or late May and the whole month of June, and you can see smallmouth in their habitat. You can literally get out of your boat and walk next to them. It's when they're aggressive on beds. It's insane. It truly is. There's a lot of times bed fishing where I'll get a fish to react and I'll just let them swim with it. I won't even set the hook.
Right.
Be like, ah, gotcha.
Yep.
What I had you. Like if
I
I'm fun
won that
fishing,
game. Yeah.
I'm actually looking for the ones that are gonna. If I'm just all fun fishing, that are gonna be a challenge for me to catch.
Yep.
It's another cool thing about bed fishing, and a lot of guys that have done it might not pay attention to this that close, but when you pull up to a fish that's fresh, been on the bed, relaxed, they're dark, black, like almost black. You'll see them from a distance; they'll be black.
Yep.
Like there's no way you're not going to be able to see this fish on a bed. Soon as you wound them up a little bit, they go clear.
Really?
Their color changes instantly. They go from relaxed, chilled, dark colored to blending into their surroundings. It's insane to watch it happen.
That's nuts.
It's very cool. That's a lot of times how if I'm going through looking at fish, like I can catch that one, and that one, just because they're dark. they haven't been messed with.
Yeah.
You pull up to them, and it's usually first drop. You find one that's clear and moving around a little bit, them fish are going to be tougher to catch.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
It's so much fun. It's a wormhole, man. It's so much fun to do, and there's so much controversy around it with tournament fishing, and I get it. I see it both ways for sure.
Yep.
If there's a tournament I'm in and there's fish on beds, I'm going to catch fish on beds. It's just
Right.
the nature of the beast. But it's a ton of fun to just go out and do fun fishing.
Yep.
As well. Catch them and let them go.
Well, I mean, I kind of hope, Chase, that we kind of got you somewhat educated on the early part of it.
Like Bob said there, when the spawn's on, he goes walleye fishing.
Yeah, he's walleye fishing.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But I mean, this is have to be to be continued because we got a lot of smallmouth talk to cover yet. I mean, we're barely into the dog days is one I'd be kind of interested to get your point on that one. Is like, what do you
go punching mats that time of year?
Yeah, you just leave the smallies alone and go.
No, I don't. I can still fish them. I still enjoy going up when it's tough.
Yep. But I think Chase is kind of, we're looking for a lot more of that, Chase. So, and anybody else, I mean, we're looking for topics to cover on the show. Like we
guests as well.
Yeah.
Bob, if you want to come in one day and talk.
Well, and if you can't make it here too, they can always Skype them in,
Yep.
right? And I think that's what does Brian say here? As soon as you take them out of the water at times, yeah. So
yeah, definitely. They change color in your live wells.
You can call this the real shot. So, but yeah, anybody's got any questions, any comments, we always say at every show, just drop them in our Facebook Messenger on some of the posts. We're going to leave that post up there. Just go ahead and drop them in there. We'll try to cover them. Like with sturgeon spearing coming up, I think the sturgeon decoy one is interesting. Because I was talking to Scott about that because, when he's going to be hopefully filming some of that stuff, he's like, why do they even use decoys? And I'm just like, well, here's why I think they use decoys. But it'd be cool to talk to like Ryan Foster and get the exact reason why he really feels, and like the creativity that they get with the sturgeon decoys. I think it would be really cool to talk to him about that one. So, but you are potentially not here because I was going to say to be continued on Friday, but you're not in on Friday.
Yeah, I likely won't be here Friday.
So Lance, you have to answer all the smallmouth talk.
I will. We'll play Fact or Fiction again. I'll run
maybe
that
I'll
show.
Come down for the show and then take the rest of the day if we want to do that. But
well, I think it'd be kind of cool to pick up where we left off. I don't know if Brian's going to be here or not. If he's not, we can play that game if you're okay with coming on in.
Yeah.
So
let's plan on it.
But awesome. All right, cool. I mean, that's already an hour, guys. That was a pretty fast one. It's about an hour.
It's always fun. Talking fishing, all of it. It's a lot of fun. So
Heck yeah.
Lance, any final thoughts for anybody?
If you haven't checked out Fix TV yet, we're still adding content daily to that. So that's really coming along really well. So get on over there, download the app. You can start a free trial if you just want to test the water, so to speak, and see what's on there. So
and more stuff coming.
Yep, Fix TV, Fix.tv, I should say, go to or download it on your Android, Apple phone, Roku app, Fire TV, all that kind of stuff. So that's exciting. Besides that, if you're still in the area locally or shop online, the Real Shot still has some sales going on. So
pick up some second or the first.
Talked about the first. Some of that might bleed over into something, but I can't say for certain. So if you are shopping still, check out therealshot.com. Right. Stop in the store.
You're like me, like my wife and I were talking about this. I'm done buying for everybody else now. Just can't now it's time to start buying for me.
Oh yeah, you got some gift cards or some
whatever.
You just return everything everybody got you. Yep.
Oh look, something new.
Andy, any final thoughts?
No.
Did you learn anything today, Andy, about catching smallmouth bass?
Yes. Yes, I did.
There's gonna be a test, Andy.
I gave Andy a guaranteed catch a fish from the bank spot, and he's still yet to go there.
Andy,
come on, Andy.
Hey, it's Mona and the kids are just as much a part of that decision since they actually fish more than me. So,
all right. Well,
give her the spot then.
Yeah. Go catch them. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. We're going to get out of here. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, and we will see you Friday morning at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time.
Thanks, everybody.
Get your fix.